My name is Mehari Tesfayohannes. I am the Chief Information and Forecasting Officer for Desert Locust Control Organization, Eastern Africa. Okay, you have raised several questions here, so I will go one by one in order to make it clear what this pest is. So the first question is raised is that what factors influence the migration of the desert locust into countries like Kenya where they have been extinct? Okay, to start with, these locusts are like other animals. They are insects, and we consider them animals. So if you take different animals, they migrate from one place to another place. So the desert locust also migrate from one place to another place as other pests. We have migrations of animals, we have migration of birds. They migrate from one place to another place in order to survive. For survival, they need food. So if the food becomes scarce in one area, then they move to another area where there is plenty of vegetation or other suitable ecological conditions for them to survive. We have an example migration of wild beasts in Kenya. They're migrating from Kenya to Tanzania. From Tanzania again, they come back to Kenya. This is in search of food, in search of suitable area. Locusts are like this, so they have to migrate from one area to another area. But the word which mentioned here, extinct, the locusts never gone to extinct. They were somewhere, but they haven't come to Kenya because of some conditions. These conditions, maybe they will be answered in the next questions, but every year we have locusts in our region or in other region. In small numbers, which we call them isolated or scattered, they live in areas which we call it recession areas. So in the recession area, they are there every year, every day they are there. In that recession area, they live in a scattered form or isolated form. They live in a scattered and isolated form when they don't have good conditions for them, for breeding or for multiplication. So once they get these conditions, the environmental conditions become favorable, then their numbers also starts to increase. Like other animals, even pigs, domestic animals or wild animals, when it is drought, we see them die. When the conditions is good, they start again breeding and multiplication. The locusts are just like that. They start, from a few scatter, they increase their numbers to few hundreds, from few hundred, thousands, 100,000, and they become into millions when the conditions is favoring them day to day. So we don't say that they are extinct. They didn't come. They haven't come to Kenya because of conditions that I indicated. That number one, countries up there like Eritrea, Sudan, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Somalia, Ethiopia, they were controlling them there. So they didn't have the numbers or the mass breeding that can push them into this area. So the main thing, they didn't come to Kenya for, let us say, for the last 70, 60 years. It's because they were controlled up there. I can give some examples, like in 1986, 87, 88, there was an outbreak in the northern part of Africa, in the Arabian Peninsula, in the Central Asian countries. So many countries in Western Africa, West Africa, Northern Africa, Eastern Africa have been invaded almost for 3 years. Again, in 2003 and 2004, there was a very high level of infestation, mainly in Northwest Africa and Northern Africa. And that has costed the world more than $300 million to control them. So, locusts, we cannot say extinct, but they haven't come to Kenya because of control operations that were going on out there. That is the only reason. But this time they came to Kenya due to some security issues. Let us say Yemen was controlling and monitoring this local situation well. But we know that in Yemen there is unsecure situations. At the same time in Somalia, if we come in Somalia, there is unsecure situations. So the locusts in Yemen and Somalia were not monitored. So they were breeding there. At the same time, they were not controlled. So that is why they found what we call a peaceful road or peaceful way to migrate to Eastern African countries. At the same time, Kenya is not a recession country. Kenya and other Eastern African countries are not a recession. So you don't see locusts in individual phase or in scattered phase. Once the invasion time has elapsed, that is around June, they will migrate out of Kenya. The locusts which we are seeing now, they will migrate out of Kenya. So we will not see any individual or isolated locusts in Kenya. That is how we don't say that the locusts are extinct. They are not extinct and they are there in the nature. The second question is, how fast do the locusts reproduce and don't they have predators which feed on the eggs? I have indicated that when there is favorable ecological conditions, those few scattered or isolated locusts, they will start breeding and they will increase their numbers. Once the number starts to increase, then when you take the ratio of predators in the locust, these predators are there. We have predators, insect predators, we have birds there, we have what we call other animals like snakes, frogs, foxes. They feed on them. There are different types of birds which are feeding on them. On top of it, they have also virus which attacks them. They have bacteria which attack them. They have fungus which also attacks them. But when you take the ratio of the predators and the animals which are feeding there and the number of their multiplication, they cannot cope them. So they might feed on few of them, but you will find millions of them in the nature. Otherwise, they have predators, like other animals. Other animals have predators, and these have also predators. So the number of predators comparing with the multiplication of the locust cannot be coped only by the predators. So yes, there are predators there, they are feeding on them, but the number cannot be controlled. That is why we use other means of control operations like chemical control operations. What is their epicenter, and is there a way to predict when they will come? Yes, they have epicenter, you call it epicenter, but we call it recession areas. These recession places. They have recession places. These recession places are found mainly on the Red Sea coastal areas. We have in the northwestern African countries, in the northern African countries. We have in the Arabian Peninsula, in Saudi Arabia, Yemen. We have in India, Pakistan. These are small restricted areas where this locust will get conducive ecological conditions for the whole year round. So that is what you call it epicenter, and we call it recession areas. So they have recession areas. In those recession areas, they live as individual, they live scattered until they get the favorable ecological conditions. So when they get these favorable ecological conditions, this locust starts coming together. So they come together, they start multiplying. One individual female locust in her age, that is when they are in adult stage, they lay eggs up to 301. So if we have millions of females there, now we can multiply 1 million multiplied by 360 million locusts will come out. So if we say we have a medium-sized swarm there, a medium-sized swarm, let us say it has around 5-10 million individuals. So if you multiply that 5-10 million individuals by 360, you can see how within a short period of time how the numbers can increase. So from this epicenter or the recession areas, once they get good ecological conditions, they start breeding and multiplying. So they move from one area to another area in search of food, in search of favorable ecological conditions. So once the recession area becomes unfavorable for them, they have to come out from that recession area into another area. So that is how we see them migrating from one country to another country in search of food and in search of suitable areas. So they will not remain in one area. When the season changes from one season to another season, they have to move from one area to another area. That is how they migrate from one place to another place. And this also can be predicted. This also can be predicted because the countries, as I have said, those countries which are like in the recession areas, they do year-round monitoring. They do year-round monitoring to monitor the number of the locusts. Are they increasing or decreasing? At the same time, they see the ecological condition. Is it favoring for the locust or not favoring? So there is a monitoring system set up in those countries which are considered recession places. They monitor and they forecast. But if we take like Kenya, as I have indicated earlier, Kenya is not a recession area. So there is no need for Kenya and the other Eastern African countries to do year-round monitoring and year-round forecasting. But they have to monitor the situations which is going around the recession areas and around the breeding areas. What is happening there? So they have to get the information from those countries on daily basis or weekly basis or monthly basis. So they will know the situation. So they will prepare themselves ahead if the forecast says that locusts are moving to Eastern Africa. So they have to monitor the situation, the forecast. What is the forecast? Are the locusts likely to come to Kenya? So they have to monitor the situation, but Kenya is not supposed to do year-round monitoring because they don't have locusts in solitary phases, as Kenya and other Eastern African countries are not recession areas. So this monitoring and forecasting system is done only in those recession areas like Eritrea, Sudan, Ethiopia, Somalia, in the other Arabian countries like Saudi Arabia, Yemen. If we go far to the Central Asian countries like India, Iran, Pakistan, if we go to West Africa, North Africa, all this they do year-round monitoring because they are the recession places. And the fourth question, how many locust swarms is the region currently facing, and is it possible to quantify in terms of hectares that they have invaded so far? Yeah, we have swarms, number of swarms. We cannot indicate this number of swarms, but there are swarms currently in Kenya, there are swarms in Ethiopia, there are swarms in Somalia, there are swarms in Eritrea, there are swarms in Sudan, there are swarms in Saudi Arabia, there are swarms in Yemen. So this area, we have swarms, number of swarms. But now, these swarms are mostly concentrated in Kenya. Almost by now, around more than 10 counties have been infested with these swarms. And control operation is there going on. There are aircraft which are stationed in different counties, and they are controlling them. So the swarms are coming from Somalia and southeastern Ethiopia. So the swarms are coming in, the control operation is going on. So once the swarms are coming and the control operation is also going on, so the number is decreasing. And the swarms which are coming from Somalia and southeastern Ethiopia is almost diminishing. So we will be engaged only in the control operation which the locusts which are already in Kenya and in Ethiopia. Eritrea are controlling locusts which have migrated from Ethiopia. Sudan, they have local breeding. Saudi Arabia and Yemen also, they have local breedings, but they are controlling them. So we have several swarms in the region, including Eastern African regions. What impact have the locusts had in Asian countries like China, Iran, India, and how have they been coped? The current infestation in the region is a continuation of the infestation which has occurred in 2019. Kenya has faced this locust during December 2019, and up to now it is continuing. At that time, not only Kenya which was infested by swarms, but Ethiopia was infested, Somalia was infested, Eritrea was infested, Sudan was infested, Yemen was infested, Saudi Arabia was infested, Iran was infested, India, Pakistan, all these have been infested, mainly during 2020. Iran and India has battled a lot, and they have controlled the situation. Currently, they are almost free of this infestation. But in Kenya, we are witnessing for the second round, that is for second year of infestation. This is due to the mass breeding which was going on in Somalia. Actually, the current swarms came from Somalia and eastern Ethiopia. In 2000, I said the infestation started December 2019, and Kenya was battling this locust for the whole year 2020, during 2020. Before even they finalize the control of that invasion, another invasion came in. This is now in 2021. And the number, actually we haven't seen any migration up to now from the Arabian countries to Eastern Africa. There is no migration. So we can say this, the current infestation came only from Somalia and Eastern Ethiopia. As I said, the situation in Somalia is not secure, so these locusts were actually breeding in those areas where it is not secure. We cannot say Somalia has not controlled also. Somalia was assisted by FAO. There were aircraft there, So they were controlling them by air and by ground, but there were some areas which they couldn't reach. So the current infestation started from there. And the current situation in Iran and India and the other like Pakistan, they don't have now locusts. They already controlled them. Yeah, you have included China also. China, this breeding is not restricted only in a few countries. During the invasion time, recession, I say recession and invasion time. Recession is restricted into very few locations. But during invasion, these locusts, they move out of these recession areas and they invade more and more. They widen their presence. I have indicated earlier, in 1986 and 87, swarms have reached to Latin America, the Caribbean countries, which they crossed almost 4,000, 5,000 kilometers. And up to now, nobody knows how they can manage to fly that distance. It is known that a locust can fly only for 10 hours during daytime. And they fly with the help of the wind. If the wind is strong, they move further. If the wind speed is low, they move less distance. So if they fly 10 hours per day, and per hour if they move 18 kilometers or 20 kilometers, so that we estimate per day their movement is 200 kilometers, around 180 to 200 kilometers. So if they fly that one, and crossing from Western Africa to Caribbean countries is 4,000 kilometers. So 4,000 kilometers. And that 4,000 kilometers is ocean. So how do they fly that area without resting? 4,000 kilometers. And for how many days they flew and they have seen in Caribbean countries? It is still a puzzle how they reach there. Also at that time, some of the locusts reached up to the southern part of Europe. They reach up to Italy. They reach up to the Central Asian countries. They reach the southern part of the Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan. So during the invasion period, they cover wider area. And during 2020, some part of China was also affected by the swarms, but they control them easily. I don't know, some of them, they say they use geese. They use geese to control them, but I don't know whether they have done that or not. It might be a joke or something. But they have controlled them. Iran and India also control them. Currently they are free. But if they are not controlled well, this invasion also will again move to another countries like Uganda, Tanzania. Tanzania maybe, the locust actually, mostly they move with the wind direction. So if the wind direction is south, they move south. If it is east, they move east. So they move with the help of the wind. So if the wind is now mostly it is westerly, so mostly it is indicating the wind is moving to Uganda, South Sudan, and southern Ethiopia. So the likely situation of the migration of these swarms, which are currently in Kenya, might be to Uganda, southern Ethiopia, or southern Sudan, but it is unlikely that they will move to Tanzania. So the control operation, as I said, is continuing. So if Kenya managed to control this locust, then we will not see further migration to Uganda and South Sudan. Currently, the swarms which are in Kenya are some of them are maturing. Maturing means now they have finished their immature stage. Immature stage, we call it, they are not ready for breeding and copulating. So once they start maturing, After maturing, they will mature and they will start now populating and laying eggs again. So we'll see the first generation of locust in Kenya. If Kenya is not going to manage the infestation, and if the locust reach maturity, we will see the first breeding in Kenya. But they are doing their best. If FAO is assisting Kenya, there are several aircraft which are engaged in control operations. Our organization is also assisting Kenya. We have aircraft, spray aircraft here, even there are few. We have pilots ready for that operations. In 2020, we have assisted a lot. Our aircraft, DLCO aircraft, were based in Wajir. They were based in Masinga Dam, around that area. Our aircraft, another aircraft was based in Turkana. It was stationed in Lodwa. And that aircraft was working a cross-border operation between Uganda and Kenya. It was stationed in Lodwa in Kenya, and it was stationed in Moroto in Uganda. So when the infestation is when the swarms moved to eastern Uganda, the aircraft sprayed there. Once the locusts are in Kenya, and it flew back. So there was an agreement between Kenyan and Ugandan governments that that aircraft works without any problem cross border. Once they call to Kenya, it comes to Kenya. Once called to Uganda, it goes to Kenya. So we are doing like this, and we have done a lot of operations there. Yeah, most people they don't see DLCO engagement in desert locust. This has its own reason, because as I indicated earlier, we are not dealing only with locust. We are dealing also with these grain-eating birds. So while we were engaged ourselves in desert locust, we were also called to control quelea birds in Ethiopia. We were called in Kenya. We were called in Tanzania. So our aircraft were doing two businesses. That is the quelea business and the desert locust business. So that is why Desert Locust Control Organization is not seen mostly engaging in desert locust control operation. At the same time, the magnitude of the infestation, I have an experience of almost 30 years in this desert locust, but I never seen such kind of magnitude of infestations that occurred in Kenya in 2020. So if we leave that control operation only for this organization, with the number of aircraft we have and with the number of pilots we have, we couldn't cope. That is why FAO is assisting member countries in hiring of aircraft and also purchasing of pesticides, purchasing of other spray equipment. We are also engaged not only in control operation, also we have engaged in training of staff of the member countries. You know, the main thing, even if you bring hundreds of aircraft or hundreds of spray equipment and millions of liters of chemicals, if you don't have trained people on the ground, that control operation cannot be successful. So the first thing what you should have before the equipment, before the pesticide, is train the people on the ground. So the first thing what we done in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture of Kenya is to train people. We have trained the people in Mandera, we have trained in Wajir, we have trained in Marsabit, we have trained in Isiolo, so we have trained in Nakuru. So we have trained several people at the beginning of the infestation. But the training was not stopped there. It was continued with the assistance of FAO. So there are several trained staff in Kenya currently. So we have no now difficulty in in personal wise. They are doing the survey, they are passing information on the condition of the locust. So we have now trained staff, we have equipment in Kenya. But at the beginning, Kenya started from scratch, started from zero. They didn't have any trained personnel, they didn't have pesticides, they didn't have any equipment on the ground. So it started from the scratch. But by now, Kenya is almost strongest than the other countries in the region in terms of personnel and in terms of equipment. That is what I can say about Kenya. What have been some of the interventions applied to control the invasion and which intervention has been successful? The only intervention which is permissible is chemical control operations. Even though there are predators, parasites there on the ground, but as I have said, they cannot cope with the infestation. At the same time, some biological pesticide also used, but that biological agent which is currently used is only effective on hoppers, the hopper stage. But the adults, once they start flying, that chemical, that biopesticide is not effective. So mostly the choice is to use chemical control operation. But those chemical control operations are also selective. They are mostly used for locust control operations. And there are different formulations that we use to control locust. There are EC formulations, which you call the emulsifiable concentrate. You mix them with water. There are ULV chemicals, which you call them ultra low volume applications. This ultra low volume, you don't mix them with water, but you spray them as they are. And there are special equipment to use them. You don't use any spray equipment to spray ULV. No, they have special equipment, special gadget. So those special gadgets actually, they spray. One droplet is measured in microns. Microns is less than a millimeter size. So the amount of chemicals that is sprayed per hectare is very minimum. Half a liter, 1 liter, you spray it in a hectare. Hectare, that is in 10,000 meters square. So the drop, you can imagine the drop that lands in one given meter square is very, very minute. So 1 liter to spray in a hectare is, you need special equipment. So we use special equipment to spray them. When you spray like this, it is not actually affecting the environment due to their size. Well, there are two types of operations that currently countries are using. That is the ground control operation and the aerial control operations. Once the locusts are in hopper stage, you use mostly ground equipment. You don't use aircraft. Aircraft are mostly used for swarms, actually settled swarms. You don't spray flying swarms. Once the swarms are settled in the evening or before they start migrating in the morning, that is when you spray. You don't spray daytime when they are spraying, when they are flying, because they are covering wider area when they fly. And it is not safe for the applicators, and it is not safe also for the environment. So we choose early morning or in the evening when we spray. So people might panic, when they see flying daytime, they want them to be sprayed, but no, we don't spray flying swarms in daytime. So people should know this one. For the hoppers, also, if the area that is covered by the hoppers is more than 1,000 square meters, you can spray by aircraft. if the area is suitable for real applications.